All right, so kia ora, everyone. So this morning's class, you'll need a blanket. I'd suggest two. You might want three if you want to place one on top of you at the end in your relaxation, and a bed pillow, a sleeping pillow, and you may want a sofa cushion as well nearby. If you've got one at hand, you could just grab that and have that close by. And before I introduce the session this morning, I invite you to just pre-roll your blanket. And I've got a fairly firm blanket here, and I'm going to roll it into a sort of oval sausage shape, and fairly tightly. So I've got a fairly firm oval roll that I'm just going to leave at the side of my mat ready. And I'll just briefly chat to you before we get stuck into our practice this morning. So I'd like to focus the next two classes on breath, and you know, it's an automatic natural process that we all have, that we need to keep us alive, and how we have two main different breathing patterns. We've got our normal breathing pattern, which recruits our primary breathing muscles, so the diaphragm, situated sort of in the lower rib cage, and the intercostal muscles, which are situated between the rib cage, and they help expand the rib cage to allow the lungs to expand and condense. And then we have heavy breathing, which the body or the breath naturally adapts to when we want to run up the stairs or climb a mountain. And in this breathing pattern, we'll be using our primary breathing muscles along with our secondary breathing muscles, which include the sternocleidomastoids and the scalenes of the upper chest and the neck, and also the pecs and the abs as well. So you're all familiar with that, I'm sure. You notice that you breathe differently doing your day-to-day tasks than if you're getting puffed out and you're really having to work hard to get up a hill, for example. And now, I said it's an automatic process, mechanism, but you're all now familiar that it can also be a conscious process. We can consciously change our breath, and our breathing influences our nervous system directly, and the nervous system also influences our breath. So what I'd like to point to today is how, particularly when we're in a stress state or we have lots on our plate, we tend to move into neither normal breathing or heavy breathing. It's sort of somewhere in between, where the breath becomes shallow and we breathe up into the chest, and it tends to be the secondary breathing muscles that are relied upon here. And this isn't an efficient way to breathe. We're not breathing deeply or quickly for heavy breathing, for getting us somewhere quickly. It tends to be a process that happens under stress and worry and strain. And what happens here is that the muscles, the superficial muscles, contract, and the breath shortens, the exhale definitely shortens. And I'm sure you can think back to a situation where you have been very stressed and your breath has just felt disconnected to what your needs are. And this can perpetuate this state of stress. I said before that breathing affects our nervous system, and our nervous system affects our breathing. And so when we're in this shallow chest breathing state, then that continues this cycle of stress response. And by changing the way that we breathe, can gradually bring us back to a more balanced state of nervous system. And we can really use the breath as our teacher. It's always there for us when we remember it. And by having the skills and the tools to recognize, or it's really having the refinement of awareness to recognize when we move out of a more natural, normal breathing pattern, and then having the tools and the skills to influence the breath to bring us back to a more homeostatic state. So today we'll focus more on ways of freeing up the body to increase efficiency of breathing. We'll also acknowledge or inquire into the relationship between gripping and tension and how that influences the breath, just on an experiential level. And we'll also talk a little bit about the diaphragmatic breathing, but we'll go more deeply into that next week. Good. So hopefully I've covered everything I wanted to just touch on. I might just check briefly. And what you could do now is come and lie down on your back. You might like to use your cushion under your head and have your pre-rolled blanket. If you haven't done it already, you might just like to do that, just rolling your blanket in an oval roll and have that next to you on your mat, by your mat. Lie yourself down in a comfortable supine position. You could have your knees bent and your feet on the floor, or you could have your legs extended away, and make sure that you're as comfortable as you can be. So add anything that you need here. And I'm just going to give you a moment to arrive and settle. So once you've arrived into this chosen shape, just soften your gaze, or maybe even close your eyes as a symbol of turning your attention away from the external and retreating to the internal. Give yourself the time to arrive and to settle. And consciously becoming physically present, so physically embodying your whole shape and form, so that you notice where your body meets the ground. You notice the quality of support beneath your body. And this arrival into your practice this morning. Arrival into your body this morning. And I invite you to welcome your breathing body into your awareness. It's this amazing thing that happens when we turn our attention to our breath. It changes. But could you try and just allow your body to breathe naturally? Try not to change your breath too much. Bringing an attitude of curiosity to your breath. So no judgment, there isn't any judgment here. It's just curiosity and exploration. And notice the quality of your breath here in this position. Is the breath smooth or rough? And as you feel into the quality of your breath, perhaps just appreciating this tool that you have, this anchor that simply turning your attention to brings you present. Can you follow the whole length of a breath, the whole inhale, the whole exhale, as you feel into the quality of your breath? And just how it changes. The quality of your inhale is different to the quality of your exhale. How does your breath feel from an inner sense? And notice as you continue this inquiry, if there's any feelings of restriction in your breath or tightness. And just notice, don't worry, don't panic, just notice. And I do really encourage you, if any of these inquiries trigger any sense of panic or unease, then let it go. You could simply bring your attention back to your physical body and know that you can explore coming back to it at another time. How is the rhythm of your breath here in this moment? Is it fast? Is it slow? And without any judgment, noticing the area of movement of your breath in your body. Where do you feel the movement of breath in your body? You notice it primarily in your lower torso, upper belly, or primarily in your chest. And we're just reviewing here, we're just noticing what is present for us today. It changes moment by moment, day by day. And inviting a sense of relaxing into your natural rhythm, your natural breathing pattern. Spoke of this direct correlation between tension and gripping and freedom and ease of breath. And if you'd like to, you can do a little experiment here. Taking your arms down by your side next to your body and starting to clench your fists and tense your arms and maybe tense your shoulders slightly. And as you do that, just for a few breaths, noticing the quality of your breath, noticing any changes that happen in the feeling of your breath in your body. Maybe just taking a couple more breaths here with tensed hands and arms. And then letting go, relaxing the arms, yielding. Noticing what happened to your breath. And you could, if it wasn't very clear the first time, you could, if you'd like, try that again. Tensing the hands, the arms, maybe the shoulders. And maybe become a little more curious here. Where do you feel the restriction of your breath in your body? Where do you feel a tightening or a gripping? Feel the effect of this clenching on your breath. And then relax, soften, let go. Notice. So let's take this a little bit further by really inviting a quality of yield into this posture. Yielding being where we surrender the weight of the body and simultaneously receive the support of the ground. So as you continue to surrender the weight of your body, you get a sense of that quality of support beneath you. Surrendering into a more restful, relaxed and soft state. Allowing an unraveling of any tension, any gripping. And as you continue to yield your body, noticing the quality of the mind, could you also yield the mind, soften the mind, like you would a tense muscle? As if you were a sack of rice that's being plonked on the ground, everything sinking downwards. And noticing your breath. So perhaps deepening your awareness to notice this influence of tension and gripping and how that influences the breath. And then relaxing, yielding, softening, and how that influences your breath. So we'll move into some practices now to invite more softening and particularly focusing into areas and musculature of the body that assist breathing, and they can get tight and tired. So we'll use our roll here and place it on the upper part of the back. Have your pillow underneath your head. You might want 2 pillows here if you've got a slightly bigger roll for your spine. So we'll start on the back of the body here, the back of the rib cage. And I'm just going to place the roll underneath the sort of upper shoulders region of the back. Do use more head support if you feel that you need it. And I'm going to bring a very gentle rocking motion into the body as I transition my weight from one side of the back to the other. Could you explore a little bit of pressure and moving of that pressure around the connective tissue of the back of the rib cage and the spine? I've got my arms just softly floating in the air. You could have the hands on the shoulders if that feels a bit more comfortable for you, if the arms get tired or achy, or you can just find your own way with this. And I encourage you to move slowly so you can really tune in to how this feels in the back. You might move a little further over to the edge of the back for rolling onto your side. And I am really using my legs to assist this rocking. My legs are really playing a part in this by transitioning weight. And what I'll slowly start to do is work my way down the length of the back, and I'm going to shimmy my way backwards, but you might find it easier to move the roll down the back with the hands. It's up to you, whatever feels more comfortable and appropriate. And letting go of thinking, of analysing, and just being present with how this movement feels in your body. You invite a bit of a massage practice into the back of your body. As you shift and move, softening into that touch, relaxing into that touch. If it feels too high, too much at any time, then you could use something a little thinner, maybe a towel, or you could re-roll your blanket roll so that it's longer and lower. You might notice little creaks and cracks, little releases. And do spend as much time as you'd like on any areas that feel they need that extra care and attention. And I'm going to pause once I get down to the lower part of the rib cage. I'm just going to pause there for a moment. I might lower my arms down. A place that feels fairly comfortable to just rest with that roll in contact. And we're pausing on the area of the home of the diaphragm in the lower part of the rib cage. Creating a little bit of feedback in the back body. You might even exhale and just very gently press that part of the back into the roll, very gently. And sensing the opening created in the front of the rib cage. Perhaps taking some conscious breaths here, gently targeting the breath into this lower rib cage, upper belly region. Not trying to strain the breath or force the breath, but perhaps extending it slightly if that feels suitable for you. Not just noticing the expansion occurring through the front of the body, but noticing any movement in the sides of the rib cage, maybe even into the back of the rib cage as it moves towards the blanket roll. And then if you'd like to, at some point you might like to just continue on your little massage down the length of your spine. And what I tend to do once I get to the lower rib cage and below is lift the pelvis up slightly, and so that you can start to work into your lumbar spine and the sides of the waist here. So lifting the pelvis once I get down to the lower part of the rib cage and the lumbar spine. And using this movement and this feedback as an invitation to let go of any gripping and release any restrictions. And it can be quite nice just to spend a brief time just on the outer hips, the upper pelvic region. Then you take your time. If you're still working your way down your back, then continue on. That's where you're at. But if you have worked your way all the way down the length of your spine, just releasing that roll. placing the roll over the lower rib cage. So over the lower rib cage, the area of where your diaphragm lives. And then using your arms or your hands, just placing your hands on top of that roll. And it's like you're gently hugging the blanket, the outer length of the blanket down towards the side waist. And just resting here, just pausing here. Legs could be bent or extended. And as you take your pause, would you relax the connective tissue of your back down into the floor? Being present with any residue from that exploration. Any sensations that you notice in the back body. Perhaps even feeling into the intercostal muscles between your rib cage. And then turning your attention to this contact of roll blanket over lower rib cage. Arms very gently squeezing in towards the body, creating a gentle restriction, a gentle pressure. And if this doesn't feel right for you, if it feels a little triggering, then let go of the blanket and you can just continue to stay with your natural breath. If you'd like to here with the blanket on, exploring creating a little bit of resistance with the blanket over the lower rib cage as you extend your breath slightly. Lengthening your breath slightly, not moving into any strain. Just enough to feel that slight resistance of the roll. As if you're giving your diaphragm a little workout. Maybe a couple more lengthened breaths here. And then releasing your blanket, releasing any effort or intention with the breath, and just being present for a moment with your natural breath. And just noticing what happens when you allow your body to breathe just how it needs to breathe in this moment. So the next inquiry I'm going to invite you into is into a side lying posture. So do adapt this in any way you need to if lying on your side isn't appropriate today. I'm actually going to take my blanket and just refold it into a rectangle rather than a roll. You might have a softer blanket than me and your rolled blanket might be fine. For me, I find this blanket needs to be rectangle to be a bit softer. We're going to explore 3 different points of the rib cage. The first point is in the sort of shoulder region, sort of above the shoulder blades, in line with the chest pretty much. The second position is in the middle rib cage region, so sort of in line with the breastbone, or the lower breastbone. And then the third placement is in the lower rib cage region. So 1, 2, 3. So we don't want the roll to be too wide because we want to really target those 3 areas. And I'm going to invite you to come and lie on your right side with the roll under the first position, the upper rib cage position. Use your pillow for your head, a couple of pillows if you need to. And lie yourself down with your arm extended under you, if that's comfortable for you, and your knees bent. And just arrive and just sensing into that point of contact in your upper rib cage. Support your head a little higher if you need to. And from here, I invite you to just slide your top arm forwards as if we would in our shoulder sequence, just enough to feel a lengthening in the back, and then sliding the arm across as you transition the weight towards the back on the roll, but not all the way to the back. And then just continue this little slide and glide. It's a shortened version than our shoulder sequence. We're just transitioning the weight from the side of the rib cage towards the back side of the rib cage. We're not moving all the way onto the back. And perhaps just taking 3 or 4 in total of these slide and glides as you bring a bit of a massage into the side of the rib cage. Now, please do take care. Sometimes we do this side lying over a Gertie ball, which we can't do without our in-person classes. So if your blanket's feeling a bit firm, or if there is some scar tissue there or some discomfort, then please do listen to the messages that you are receiving from your body. Adapt it where you need to. And just to finish off this first placement, just pause in stillness briefly. Inviting this section in contact with the blanket to yield a little more fully into that support. And then when you're ready, moving the blanket down to the second position, down to the middle ribs. Well, it's all going to be slightly different for each of us, but not the lower ribs in the area of the diaphragm, but a little higher. Give yourself a chance just to arrive there first. And then if you'd like to, exploring the slide and glide. And I quite like just lifting my top leg, a little bit like a clam motion, just to assist that transitioning of weight. Really feeling into this area that you're creating feedback for. Yielding into any tension or tightness or tiredness. Three or 4. Rolling around the area of the side ribs. And coming to pause on your side for a moment. And yielding this middle part of the ribs into that support. Give this middle part of the rib cage permission to drop down, to sink. And when you're ready, lowering the blanket just slightly lower into the third position, into the lower rib cage, upper belly region. Excuse me. And once you've settled here on this third placement, you might like to explore again the roll, the sliding and gliding of the arm, the gentle rotation through the spine. Counting for yourself, 3 or 4. And then coming back to just lie on your side over this blanket. And if you'd like to, just like we did with the blanket over the front of the lower rib cage, extending your breath into that feedback, into that restriction of the blanket beneath you. So the right side, lower side of the rib cage, the right side of the diaphragm is consciously expanding out and into that support. And then contracting, releasing, yielding. Now we don't quite have the benefit of the yielding Gertie ball here, the lovely Lisa Peterson's version. So maybe you can imagine. Maybe you could imagine that yielding surface beneath you as you breathe into it. And remember, no strain. We're just giving a little bit of resistance to this right side of the diaphragm. Maybe one more conscious, longer breath cycle. I want to invite you to take your time to sit up and just briefly review how your breath feels in a sitting position after that little inquiry. Maybe close your eyes. You can use a chair or the back of a wall to sit against, but we won't be here very long. Just be very curious as you gently rest your attention on how your breath feels in your body. And if there's any difference in quality and feeling between your right side and your left side. Noticing if there's any difference in quality, the right side and the left side. Something that I often notice when doing this inquiry is a sense of aliveness or energy or vibrancy through the side that I've been working on, as if awakening it. And then a more sort of stagnant or less apparent, less clear feeling on the left side. But you notice what you notice. And then once you've reviewed, then coming into the left side, and this time coming up onto the first position, the higher part of the rib cage, underneath the arm, underneath the armpit. So coming to lie on your left side this time, placing the roll in the upper rib cage, giving yourself a brief moment of pause to arrive. Make sure your head is well supported. And then if it feels appropriate on this left side lying, explore the slide and glide with the top arm forwards, and then in the direction of opening, in the direction of moving towards the back, but not onto the back. And just continual moving, continual sliding and gliding, transitioning the feedback, the gentle pressure around the side of the ribcage. Three or four sliding glides. And then just being still. Just pausing. Feeling your way with your breath, with the support beneath the upper rib cage. Patiently yielding. And you're ready to, sliding the roll down to the mid ribs, mid part of the rib cage. And then settling there. And if you're sliding and gliding, starting that when you're ready, sliding right fingertips forwards, along the arm or the floor, and opening towards the ground as you start to rotate. You could use that right knee to help that transition, that opening. The knee, like a clam, could open in the direction of the ceiling and then close. Just a reminder that there shouldn't be pain caused by this. Might feel a little unfamiliar having the roll underneath this part of your rib cage, but if it's causing any pain or any, if you're noticing the body retreat and contract from it, then you might need to readjust your roll, or you might need to adapt the posture or the movement completely. The surface not being as yielding as our ball, but still being somewhat yielding, somewhat soft. Can the body respond to that? Pausing on your left side. Body breathing how it needs to breathe here. And then when you're ready, moving the roll to the final third position in the lower ribs on the left side. Sliding and gliding when you're ready, right fingers forwards. A nice gentle massage to the left side of the home of the diaphragm. Keeping the movement slow so that you can stay attentive and aware. And pausing, yielding, being still for a moment. And if you'd like to, consciously expanding your breath so that the left lower rib cage moves into the support of the blanket. And then fully exhaling. So there is an invitation of a slowing and a deepening of the breath. without strain. Of course, leaving this section out if it doesn't feel appropriate today. Maybe taking a couple more conscious, deeper breaths. And then I invite you to make your way slowly back up to sitting if that's comfortable. Could be just lying onto your back to review. If it's comfortable, coming up to any kind of sitting position, just briefly to check in. As you check in, allow the breath to be as natural as possible. And noticing what you notice. Has there been any change or shift in the quality of your breath? Don't worry if you don't notice any change. It might be happening at a level beneath your awareness, and that's okay. And then from here, I invite you just to briefly come into some movements in tabletop. So you can clear any blankets off of your mat for now. And as you come into your tabletop posture, the movements I'm going to suggest, and of course, feel free to explore your own if you wish, is our lateral spinal swings. So the spine comes into a bit of a C curve. Both legs swing over to the right, and I'm looking down towards my right toes. I'm just crossing my left foot over my right ankle. I just find that a little more comfortable. But it might be that you don't come all the way back towards the heels. You might just come a little way. And sensing into the opening and the sides of the rib cage as you laterally bend your spine. And how about when you come back to a neutral tabletop? Are there any freestyle movements that you're being drawn to explore? And particularly paying attention to those areas that you notice throughout your massage that feel a little tight or restricted. Could we add any movements, any articulation here to invite a freeing up, a loosening up? And if you'd like to at any stage, you may like to explore tucking the toes and visiting a downward facing dog, keeping the knees bent and inviting the pelvis to lengthen away from the rib cage. Noticing how the breath resets here, lowering down whenever the body's starting to tire. And you may like to visit a child's pose as a resting place. You may like to find a different resting place, which could be sitting on the floor, drawing the knees in. So you're just taking this time in your practice to visit any kind of freestyle movements in tabletop, any more active postures coming into downward facing dog if you'd like, lengthening the pelvis and the hips away from the rib cage, lengthening the sides of the waist and the front and the back of the spine, And if you're there for a couple of breaths, noticing how this posture affects and influences your breath. And at some point, coming down into some kind of flexed spinal position. So child's pose is a natural place to transition into, but of course it's not comfortable for all of us. So another alternative could be side lying, drawing the knees in, curving the spine, making a little ball. It could even be lying on your back and curling the knees in. Or it might be that seated version. So any of those possibilities, pausing there. And even as you invite your spine into a flexed position, could you expand your awareness to feel the whole circumference around the upper abdomen, lower rib cage? Feeling the breath moving in all 4 of those directions. Front, sides of the rib cage, and back. You might be resting with your natural breathing rhythm, or you might be exploring some lengthening, some extending of the breath. It doesn't matter. Noticing that if in this posture that you've chosen, if it feels freer for the breath to move, or if you still notice some restriction, constriction somewhere in your body. What is the quality of your breath here in this rounded spinal position? As you open your back into the space behind it, quietening down. So I have a suggestion to visit a supported posture as a more restorative position. Of course, if you'd rather just come into Shavasana and rest just in any resting posture for the duration of the session, then that's great. That's fine to choose that. If you'd like to set yourself up in this supported posture, what we're doing here is lifting the rib cage, the back of the rib cage up to broaden the front of the ribs and the chest. So this requires 2 blankets folded. I'm going to fold mine in thirds, and I'm going to go accordion fold. So I'm going to fold it one way and then the other way. But you might just fold it in your own way in thirds. Place that on my mat with the softer edges on my pelvic end, my lower spine end. I'm going to do the same with a second blanket in thirds. And try to make the thirds fairly equal so you don't have folds digging into your back. And these blankets are going to go directly on top of one another. And you may like a cushion for your head. And it's up to you whether you extend your legs away. Just going to move my roll a little higher up so I can, or you keep your knees bent. So for me, I'm going to have the folded blankets underneath my rib cage. You might like it a little higher up, so it's sort of in the middle area of the rib cage. I'm going to allow my lower back just to cascade down the end of the blankets. And for me, extending my legs here feels okay at this point. You be the judge of your choices. And just allow yourself a moment to really check in as you come into this posture. If it feels, if it's creating any tension in your lower back, or there's an adverse reaction coming into this, then lower down your stack. So just have one blanket underneath your rib cage. My blanket's coming down to the lowest part of my rib cage in my back body. And have a little feel around for that. You might even place your hands on your, actually, sorry, before you do that, sorry, I haven't mentioned your head. So you may like a pillow underneath your head and neck, making sure that your head feels as supported as it needs to be. And then from here, you might like to place your palms on your lower front and side ribs. And that very gentle sense of touch, hands on body. As you sense into any movement beneath the hands. You notice that you have a tendency to move into chest breathing. Here's an opportunity with the hands gently resting on the lower ribs. Just patiently invite the movement of your breath to come down into the hands. Using the hands as a gentle reminder to reset the breath into the resting state, normal breathing mode, where the diaphragm, the intercostal muscles do the bulk of the work. That is their purpose, and that's how they've been made. And do know that throughout this supported posture, if at any time it becomes uncomfortable or too open, then do adjust. Please listen and honor your body's messages. I'm going to share with you a lovely practice out of Donna Fahi's breathing book. This is a really, really fantastic resource. Very happy to lend it out to anybody who would like to have a look at it. So this practice is called following the lure of the breath. So as you settle into this supported posture, can you feel the weight of your body surrendering to the floor? And taking the time to scan your body for any tension. Beginning with your head, softening the skin across your forehead. Let the skin become smooth. Sensing into the muscles around your eyes. Letting any tension there dissolve with your outgoing breath. Let your jaw fall open as you release the temples back towards the ears. Allow your lips to part slightly, relaxing your tongue and all the muscles around your lips. Feel down into your throat, taking a moment to swallow a few times to relax any constriction in this area. As you open the throat, let your exhale pass out through your mouth for a few breaths. Sighing as you do so. And continue in this way, slowly down through your body, inviting each part of yourself to relax and open. Use that exhalation part of your breath to invite letting go and release. And when you feel settled, draw your attention to your breath. Listen to the sound of your breath. Feel the sensation of your breath. As you perceive the breath, let the sound or sensation of it draw you inward like the most tantalizing lure. And this listening to the breath has the same quality of rapt attention that you have when you strain to hear a melody far off in the distance. Let the breath lure you back to yourself. Follow each breath as it arises, each breath as it passes away. You sense the first perceptible moment of the incoming breath, and sense the very last whispers of your outgoing breath. Feeling your breath. As you might notice the waves of an ocean endlessly rising, endlessly descending, changing from one moment to the next. One moment deep, next shallow, now long, now short, then smooth, then uneven. Follow the way that your breath changes from moment to moment. Beginning to focus more of your attention on the exhalation. Allow your mind to glide down the length of an exhalation to the very last whisper of the breath. Allow the exhalation to lure you down into the dark, quiet well of your being. Perceive the pause, however brief. And with each successive exhalation, let your attention rest more deeply on the pause at the end of your outgoing breath. This is the origin of the breath, where the breath arises, where the breath returns to. Let your entire being fall into that pause, trusting that the new breath will arise without any effort on your part. As you surrender to the pause, it will become longer and more spacious, naturally. Notice, do you tend to grab for the inhalation before it is ready to arise of its own accord? Can you simply allow the next breath to arise without effort? Does it surprise you how long the pause can become before you feel any desire to breathe in? You feel yourself entering a deeper state of relaxation. Let go of even the effort of following the lure of the breath and become the breath itself. Breath breathing you. Know that you can use the lure of your breath to return to yourself at any time and in any situation. Your breath is an ever-present resource that you can always draw from for rest or replenishment. I invite you in a moment to transition your way into a completely neutral spine. So if you'd like to, removing the folded blankets from underneath your ribcage, probably taking your blanket or any pillow you have close by underneath your head. Taking pause in a neutral spinal posture. Abiding here with yourself, your breath, that empty pause, the origin of your breath. Natural essence that resides in the background. That not only your breath arises and dissolves back into, but everything. Resting here while I share some wise words of wisdom from Rumi. Your hands opens and closes and opens and closes. If it were always a fist or always stretched open, you would be paralyzed. Your deepest presence is in every small contracting and expanding, the two as beautifully balanced and coordinated as bird wings. Before you begin a transition towards closing your practice this morning, or inviting any movement back into your body, could you simply review how your breath feels in your body right now? And review the overall feeling tone within your experience, having spent the whole session exploring and diving deeply into your breathing body. And perhaps just reflecting on the content on the class today, reflecting on normal breathing patterns which recruit the primary breathing muscles, the diaphragm in the lower part of the rib cage, and the intercostal muscles between the ribs themselves. Heavy breathing when we're more active also then recruits the secondary breathing muscles, the scalenes and the sternocleidomastoids in the upper chest and the neck, the pecs in the chest, the abdominal muscles. And then at times, unwholesome breathing patterns, where we rely heavily on the secondary breathing muscles, breathing in the chest, shallow. How might you take this practice with you off your mat? This continual opportunity for presence, noticing when the breath changes, using your breath as a teacher that guides you and allows you to notice when you might have moved into a more strained or gripped or stressed state. How you might encourage the breath downwards we visit this region of the diaphragmatic breath. Now taking your time to transition. Transition at your own pace. If you need longer in a rest, then do take it. Just turn off the screen. And when it is time for you to transition out of your practice, I recommend briefly coming to sit on the floor in a chair. Spending a moment in this body shape. Feeling where your body contacts the ground and how that contact feels. Feeling into those points of contact, and how does that contact feel in your body? What is the quality of the ground or the support beneath you? And reconnecting to your physical shape. Feel the shape, the outline of your body. Feeling the weight of your body. And if you'd like to, bringing the hands together, front of the heart. Namaste.